Once upon a time, there was a merchant who had 3 daughters. Every year, on a specific day, he had to travel to a faraway city to collect money. His wife and daughters stayed home, but one sad day, his wife passed away. This worried the merchant because he didn't want to leave his daughters alone.
"I'm afraid to leave you,"
he told his daughters.
"I worry that something bad might happen while I'm gone."
He couldn't find anyone trustworthy to do his business for him, so he faced a tough decision. Leaving 3 beautiful girls alone was risky.
"Don't worry, father,"
his daughters reassured him. "We'll be fine on our own,"
"How can you be sure?"
he asked.
"I know there are dangers, like thieves in this city who might take advantage of my absence and steal from our home."
"We'll lock the house tightly and not let anyone in," the daughters promised.
"Remember not to let anyone inside,"
the merchant reminded them. With a heavy heart, he embarked on his journey, worried about his daughter's safety. Now, outside the city, there was a group of bold robbers. Their leader had noticed the merchant's departure and came up with a plan. He disguised himself as an old beggar. When evening came, he led his gang to the street near the merchant's house and knocked on the door.
"Please, have mercy on a poor soul!"
he cried.
"It's pouring outside, and I beg for shelter from the storm. Let me in for the night."
"It's a terrible storm," the eldest daughter said as the wind howled and the rain poured. "We should help this poor beggar." The second daughter peeked out the window and saw the beggar. "He's old and needy," she said. "Our father taught us to be kind to the elderly,"
"But we promised father we wouldn't let anyone in,"
reminded the youngest daughter.
"We can give him some food and help, but we must keep our promise."
The elder sisters disagreed, opened the door, and let the beggar inside. They provided him shelter and food. "Such a night isn't fit for sending a beggar away," the eldest sister said while they ate.
"I'm glad we helped him,"
added the middle sister.
"But we shouldn't forget our promise,"
the youngest one insisted. Unbeknownst to them, the beggar had sprinkled sleeping powder on their apples. The elder sisters ate theirs, but the youngest couldn't, so she threw hers away. After eating, the girls went to their room. The sleeping powder quickly made the elder sisters fall asleep, but the youngest pretended to sleep. The beggar, in disguise, went to their beds. He poked them with a pin to check if they were truly asleep. They didn't react, and he assumed the sleeping powder had worked. Then he noticed the youngest's distress but thought she was also asleep. The youngest girl watched as the beggar moved around the house, gathering valuables. She heard him unbolt the store's heavy doors. She crept out to observe him closely. In the dining room, she found the beggar's sword, which he had left behind. She knew he thought they were all deeply asleep and wouldn't need his weapons. Soon, the beggar went outside to call his gang. The brave girl rushed down and locked the store's doors securely. It was difficult, but fear gave her strength.
"He won't get back in easily,"
she thought as she waited. Footsteps approached, and she knew the thieves were back. They cursed and tried to break down the door. It held strong, and by daylight they had to flee. When the sleeping powder wore off, the elder sisters woke up. They were amazed when the youngest shared her story. "I don't believe it," the eldest said. "You're making it up,"
"You probably had a bad dream,"
added the second sister. "I had a nightmare too, and my head hurts." Only when the youngest showed them the robber's hand and the sword did they believe her. "Why did we let him in?" the eldest lamented.
"We should have kept our promise,"
the middle sister regretted. When their father returned safely, he was relieved to find his house and daughters unharmed.
"I see you managed well without me,"
he said, embracing them.
"I worried for no reason."
The eldest daughter blushed and confessed. "We were in great danger, but thanks to our youngest sister, we're safe."
"Our little sister is very wise,"
the middle daughter added. After hearing the whole story, the merchant declared,
"From now on, we should listen to our little maid's wisdom. She's beyond her years."
A very long time ago. I cannot tell you when it is so long since there lived in a town in Herefordshire a baker who used to sell bread to all the folk around. He was a mean, greedy man who sought in every way to put money by, and who did not scruple to cheat such people as he was able when they came to his shop. He had a daughter who helped him in his business, being unmarried and living with him, and seeing how her father treated the people, and how he succeeded in getting money by his bad practices. She too, in time, came to do the like. One day when her father was away, and the girl remained alone in the shop, an old woman came in.
"My pretty girl," said she, "give me a bit of dough, I beg of you, for I am old and hungry."
The girl at first told her to be off, but as the old woman would not go, and begged harder than before for a piece of bread, at last, the baker's daughter took up a piece of dough, and giving it to her, says,
"There now, be off, and do not trouble me any more."
"My dear,"
says the woman,
"you have given me a piece of dough. Let me bake it in your oven, for I have no place of my own to bake it in."
"Very well," replied the girl, and, taking the dough, she placed it in the oven while the old woman sat down to wait till it was baked. When the girl thought the bread should be ready, she looked in the oven expecting to find there a small cake, and was very much amazed to find instead a very large loaf of bread. She pretended to look about the oven as if in search of something.
"I cannot find the cake,"
said she.
"It must have tumbled into the fire and got burnt."
"Very well,"
said the old woman.
"give me another piece of dough instead, and I will wait while it bakes."
So the girl took another piece of dough, smaller than the first piece, and having put it in the oven, shut the door. At the end of a few minutes or so, she looked in again, and found there another loaf, larger than the last. "Dear me," said she, pretending to look about her.
"I have surely lost the dough again. There's no cake here."
"This a pity,"
said the old woman.
"but never mind. I will wait while you bake me another piece."
So the baker's daughter took a piece of dough as small as one of her fingers and put it in the oven, while the old woman sat near. When she thought it ought to be baked, she looked into the oven and there saw a loaf, larger than either of the others.
"That is mine,"
said the old woman.
"No, wow,"
replied the girl.
"How could such a large loaf have grown out of a little piece of dough?"
"It is mine, it is sure," said the woman.
"It is not,
said the girl.
and you shall not have it."
Well, when the old woman saw that the girl would not give her the loaf, and saw how she had tried to cheat her, for she was a fairy, and knew all the tricks that the baker's daughter had put upon her, she draws out from under her cloak a stick and just touches the girl with it. Then a wonderful thing occurred, for the girl became all of a sudden changed into an owl, and flying about the room. At last made for the door, and finding it open, she flew out and was never seen again.